Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 6th meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish? Absent. Councilmember Harrison?
Here.
Councilmember Song?
Here.
Councilmember Watson?
Here.
Councilmember Radina?
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Ackman?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Cornell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
We do have an introduction. The chair of our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, Chair Carter. Chair Carter, you have the con.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Madam Clerk. My name is Stephanie Carter. I am the chair of the Ann Arbor Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. 7 years ago to the day, July 6th, 2016, Philando Castile was shot and killed as a result of a traffic stop. It was reported that the stop was because of a cracked taillight. It's also been reported that perhaps the stop was because of tinted windows. I don't believe in coincidence, and so I don't believe that it is on that anniversary that we are here to consider the driving equity ordinance. Nor do I think it is coincidental that this ordinance comes before you on the second reading at pretty much the same time that the EMU SMART traffic study came out. Now, let me talk for just a second about that traffic study. As I have said before when I came before you, ICPOC plans to have a public forum at our next meeting, which will be September 26th. The location will be announced. We are inviting council, we're inviting all the police department, we're inviting the public. And we hope that everyone comes out, anyone who has an interest in discussing, whether it's criticizing or whatever with regard to this report, we're interested in public input. And then we expect that ICPOC will be discussing some of the recommendations in that traffic study. But let me just point to a couple of the conclusions from that traffic study. They say our analysis conclusively identified significant disparities across every dimension examined, with non-white motorists being stopped and searched more frequently, and white motorists being stopped and searched less frequently than would be expected in every instance. Some of the largest disparities identified in this analysis involve African American male drivers for stops initiated for equipment violations. Exactly what the ordinance addresses. I also want to read a quote. This is a quote that the study quotes from a larger nationwide study that was done in 2020. In a related but larger scale national study analyzing traffic stop disparities, these, Pearson is the name of the examiner, conclude that, quote, the downstream effect of traffic stops can be injurious, even if individual stop decisions are not directly affected by the color of one's skin. Similarly, enforcement of minor traffic violations, like broken taillights, even if conducted uniformly and without animus, can place heavy burdens on Black and Hispanic drivers without improving public safety. Ann Arbor is about to be on the forefront of what I think is going to be a national movement. And across the country, folks like us are looking at doing away with what really produces unnecessary contacts between the police and the public. Totally unnecessary. You know, if any of you drive and you drive out of state in places where they have toll roads, you don't often see somebody sitting in those toll booths anymore collecting the toll. They take a picture of your car and then they send you your bill. This ordinance provides for that type of enforcement if it's needed for minor traffic violations. And so, without sacrificing the public safety of those of us who live in the city of Ann Arbor and those who work in the city of Ann Arbor and come from other places, I urge you to adopt the driving equity ordinance. As I say, the ICPOC plans, once again, I can't emphasize this enough, because sometimes you put something out there and you hope that people respond to it, and we're hoping that council and the public will respond by coming out September 26th. We will announce a location. It probably will not be here in City Hall. And we'd like to discuss this. We'd like to have a public forum. But hopefully by that time, the driving equity ordinance will already be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to public comment general time.
Discussion about reparations.
Ma'am.
$97 million.
Ma'am.
They owe
We now-
you $97 million.
We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all cases will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Rita Ross.
Rita Ross, phone number 963. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Rita Ross, you can unmute your phone. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rita Ross, and I represent Earhart Village Homes Association this evening as its president. Myself and many members of our association have attended all the community meetings regarding the Earhart Road 2023 project since 2019. I have spoken and written to you about this project now for over a year. We have wanted speed reduction and resurfacing for many years. Our goal was to eliminate the sidewalk gap project because it would not serve its desired purpose, and still won't, because significant gaps remain in front of Boxford Cemetery and between the Pine Tree Streets, with no plan to fill those gaps. Also, because it would infringe upon and significantly harm our property and likely seriously damage our mature trees and paintings and plantings. We were very disappointed that it took numerous attempts to be heard by the city. We attended meetings, we made public comments, we wrote letters, but there was no response from our representative government. Our own Ward 2 council members were told not to speak with us. It was not until we hired an attorney to force a response and provided signed petitions that we finally received some response. We should not have had to pay thousands of dollars to force our representative government to respond and to work with us. Ultimately, Nick Hutchinson and Nick Bailey did meet and collaborate with us. They listened to our concerns respectfully and seriously. They investigated our suggestion to move the project west or closer to the median, which made way for the sidewalk to be closer to the existing road. They changed the retaining wall design and configuration to limit the damage to our property and agreed to replace like for like, evergreen for evergreen, for any tree that needed to be removed to accommodate their design. We do still have concerns about potential traffic issues during the construction phase. But we would like this evening to thank Nick Bailey and Nick Hutchinson for their collaboration, and we look forward to our continuing project partnership during the construction and reforestation phase of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gordon Bigelow.
My condolences to the mayor and his family for the loss of his father-in-law, a very worthy man. I am going to have to consult with members of the administration about the issues of the use of asphalt in resurfacing streets in Ann Arbor, and about the circulation study that is proposed for the downtown area of Ann Arbor. But I want you to know that I agree with Alan Haber that the downtown library lot should be a public park. The downtown has no child-friendly open space. Children are not a political constituency. They can't vote. There's no quid pro quo there. You all took the label Democrat when you ran for office. When the mayor and the majority of the council solicit high-rise builders and slavishly rezone properties to serve them, that's 20th century Republican behavior. When you silenced after meeting open mic last year, November, that was 21st century Republican behavior. If you were proud of what you do, you would not fear the open mic. Ann Arbor is precious to me. I'm ashamed of you.
So am I.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Lowe.
Lots of people are ashamed of you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast East Ann Arbor. I just want to make a brief mention on CA1. I'm glad to see it. I wish that we could just have this be like this the whole summer. And quite frankly, I wish that we could take fourth between William and Washington and make it bus only. That would really connect the various areas downtown that right now 4th, 5th, and Division sort of separate into different areas that can be hard to get across because of all of the traffic and the need to wait. I also want just want to say that I really think that that the conversation that we're having in public comments important, but seems to be misleading. And it reminds me of something I heard recently that said, hippies are horrible people who are pretending to be nice, and punks are nice people who are pretending to be horrible. And I'm feeling a lot this way about some of the public comments that we're hearing that are opposed to building housing for people, that are opposed to building sidewalks, etc. That's really make me hurt. Because if we really care about children and non-voters, we'll give them a place to live. We'll give them a safe way to walk around the city. But as is,
30 seconds.
At our current pace, we'll have finished filling all our sidewalk gaps in the city in another 50 years. And if we continue at our current pace, we will have all ages and abilities bike routes around the city, roughly never. And that is not good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blaine Coleman.
Dr. Mojgan Savabi Esfahani is running for City Council in Ward 4. That's the topic of my talk, partly, and it's also the topic of her talk. Dr. Mojgan Savabi Esfahani is announcing tonight that she's running for City Council in Ward 4 in the next election. This City Council has stood so fiercely against any Palestinian human rights resolution for so many years. Think about it. Think about it. A lot of these people look very much like Palestinians. If they're going to treat Palestinians that way, how do you think they're going to treat you? How do you think they're going to treat you? If they think Palestinians are so disposable, we've been in here 21 straight years demanding a simple human rights resolution against the apartheid state of Israel, and this city council has thrown every obstacle in our way. Radina here, when he had the gavel in his fist, practically banged her out of the room. Ayer has taken campaign money from old friends of the Israel Defense Forces. Just this week, you saw the Israel Defense Forces shooting helicopter gunships into a overpacked refugee camp of Palestinians. This is the kind of racist bastard of a city council that we're faced with. Again, if they think Palestinians are so disposable, so murderable, what do you think they think about you? What do you think they think about you? Unfortunately, whenever we bring up Palestinian human rights, the city council gets up on their chair and screams about the Holocaust in Europe, which happened. It ended in 1945. And this council uses the Holocaust as a weapon against the Palestinian people to help Israel kill more Palestinians. Whenever we mention Palestinian human rights, they jump up on their chair and scream anti-Semitism as a weapon against the Palestinian people. Even Watson and Song were practically crying like a baby over the sufferings of the Holocaust. Well, God damn it, it ended almost 80 years ago. Think about what you're doing now. Demand no more military aid to Israel. Demand reparations for black people now. Demand 10% black admissions at the University of Michigan. And stop being a sissy.
Thank
Assholes.
you. Our next speaker is Mojan Savabi Asafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. I'm here again because I am gonna run a campaign and replace this lady, Jen Iyer, who is racist, and she has accepted money from Friends of Israel Defense Forces. Israel Defense Forces are a terrorist organization that murder children, elderly, anyone they can get their hands on. Israel has done everything under the sun. Murdered toddlers, killed reporters, uprooted people from their homes, and the United States pays for these atrocities by spending billions of dollars each year from our taxes. We've been asking for 20 years that this body of people discuss. We are against military aid to Israel. They never have. I don't know what else Israel has to do for this bunch of white people to decide it is enough. A 2-year-old was killed on the same day that Ms. Song here and Mr. Watson here were crying over how much they love Israel and their friends and this and that. At the same time that Israel had murdered a 2-year-old, they were saying stuff to bring us images of people in concentration camps. People who stand against Israel and say no more murder of Palestinians are not for murder of other people. In fact, we stand against all of that, have spoken against all of that all of our lives. Shame on you to want to confuse people with that. Also, thank you for passing this ordinance on driving equity, but please, is that enough? Is that all you can do for black people in this country? Consider $97 trillion that you white people owe blacks. And you know why you owe them? Because you extracted free labor from them hundreds of years, and you piled it up, and you became the rich people that you are today. Without them and without the land that you stole from red people, from native people, you would not be sitting where you're sitting. Start thinking about giving it back. And it's $97 trillion. Did you hear me, Mr. Mayor? It's $97 trillion that you white people owe black people. Start doing it and stop squeezing black people out of this town. Your policies has made this town more segregated than ever before. You are racist against blacks and you are racist against Palestinians. And this country cannot stand that anymore. I can't stand it. No one else here can stand the racism that rules this nation. We want a change, and we will kick you out.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Watson.
I'd like to thank the Ward 2 residents who came out to my coffee hour on June 25th. And in lieu of a July coffee hour, I'd like to invite Ward 2 residents to join me at the Bromley Neighborhood Best Fest, which I'm told will be a community festival with live music and vendors that will occur Sunday, July 16th at Dolphin Pool from 12 to 5 p.m. And I'll be posting more information on that on my social media channels, but please come out and enjoy the summer, and we can even maybe talk some Ward 2 issues. Thank you.
Councilmember Song.
I was sorry to miss the last council meeting when I was sick with my son, but I did watch the meeting from home, and I was really happy and proud to see our community members come out and support Councilmember Harrison's ordinance work. It was really moving to see a series of black women leaders come out and say this is not only needed but overdue. And I was really heartened to see a unanimous support and vote for that. And tonight, we had chatted before, and I said, you know, it would be remarkable if we had black fathers come and speak to their worries about driving for their children in this city. And I heard from constituents who expressed the same stories about worrying every night, regardless of where they live, of what that experience is like to drive while black. So I look forward to the discussion tonight. I also wanted to thank the library for their work when there were some power outages earlier. I think it was like a week or so ago, and opening and making sure that folks had access to power to recharge their medical devices, their phones. The library is extraordinary. We also have thousands of families come downtown for the Comic Arts Festival. That's an annual event that attracts folks nationally. We have 3,000 to 5,000 families that come downtown for these events every weekend when they host a fair. So I encourage folks to look to the library for an example of how we can serve children and families downtown. Also, they have an ongoing, they're an ongoing resource for our Black Lives Matter discussion series. It's recorded and available online. So should you have questions about the work that we're doing here in support of Black lives outside of hanging a flag in front of City Council or having murals in our parks, these discussions happen. They've happened in community. They're recorded and they're available.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you. I just wanted to let folks know that Ward 5, Councilmember Cornell and I will be having our monthly constituent coffee hour or listening hour on Sunday, July 16th at 4 p.m. at the Arbor Art Center on the second floor. So all are welcome to come in and chat with us then. And I also wanted to draw folks' attention to something that is listed in the Clerk's Report of Communications E6, which is the Eviction Prevention Fund's final report. In March, I believe it is, City Council had appropriated $305,000 for eviction prevention, and this report outlines how those funds were used to keep folks housed in our community, and has some interesting demographic information as well. So I encourage folks to take a look at that. We also approved additional funding in our May budget as well, of which will be on the agenda tonight, to continue this work because we know too many folks are facing housing insecurity right now.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Gazieva.
Thank you. I also want to share that I am excited that we are going to be discussing again the driving equality ordinance, and as we shared, it's long overdue, and I'm glad there's so many members of the community here to voice their experiences. So I also want to thank Senator Jeff Irwin and the rest of the Ann Arbor delegation for helping us to secure, I think it was $7 million in a variety of different equity-focused projects, from our solar landfill to unarmed crisis response, to our Ann Arbor Housing Commission, as well as to Bicentennial Park, which will be the new Bicentennial Park is Southeast Area Park. It'll have a splash pad, a universal access, sensory path, and one of the most diverse parts of the city. So I just want to thank you to Senator Jeff Irwin and the rest of the delegation. Thanks.
Further communication from council. I would like to request confirmation of the following appointment that was presented to City Council at June 20, 2023 regular session to the Public Art Commission, Fang Zhang. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Redina, second by Councilmember Watson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. I would also like to recommend the following nominations for your consideration: to the Public Market Advisory Committee, James Bouge; to the Parks Advisory Commission, Vincent Cavatito and Alexa Bush. We now have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of the consent agenda. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, can I pull CA6 and CA7?
Further, Councilmember Cornell.
I'd like to pull CA19, please.
Councilor Harrison.
I'd like to pull CA5, please.
Councilmember Redina.
I don't want to pull anything. I just want to note CA8, which is a professional services agreement with Community Action Network for work in the Bryant neighborhood on the decarbonization project, and just wanted to thank the entire Community Action Network team, but specifically the folks working out of the Bryant Center. As a resident of the Bryant neighborhood, I get to see their work each and every day. They generally have folks lined up as one of the largest food pantries in the city. and the work that they're doing in the neighborhood is really transformative. And so I'm very excited to see this moving forward and look forward to the continued partnership. Thanks.
Councilmember Ekman.
Thank you. I'd like to pull CA 15 for discussion, and I also would just like to take this opportunity to highlight CA 17. We got a grant award from the U.S. Transportation and Federal Highway Administration for $3.8 million from the Safe Streets and Roads Project. And this is exciting because it's going to fund speed management, quick builds, near-miss evaluation to advance our Vision Zero transportation safety initiatives. Thanks.
Further discussion, Councilor Song.
I won't be pulling this, but I do want to note that CA 14 on the Earhart Road construction improvements is long in coming. We've had those discussions since 2018, and I'm really looking forward to continued discussions with Ann Arbor Public Schools and AAATA and how completing those sidewalks is in support of the 3 surrounding schools. And hopefully eventually when bus service does come that way, then we would have handicap accessible service there too. So thank you.
Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA 6, 7, 19, 5, and 15, please say aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with the exceptions of CA 6, 7, 19, 5, and 15, with 10 council members present, all vote in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA 14 and CA 17. CA 6, resolution to approve a professional services agreement with Live Zero Waste, Inc. for various efforts to advance the city's work on the circular economy in the amount of $150,000. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion, please. Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. This is one of many examples on the agenda of outstanding work that the Office of Sustainability and Innovations is doing to promote the circular economy, and they have contracted with Live Zero Waste for that work. And one of the pieces as I was reading through the scope of services for that contract was I recognized that there wasn't anything in there around evaluation. I talked to Dr. Stoltz around this. It is happening. This is a piece that OSI takes seriously. But I do think it's important, especially with our new millage dollars, just to be really explicit about what it is we're doing and what we expect out of the projects that we're undertaking. So I have a resolve clause that I'd like to introduce. It should be being shared around, I think. It reads, resolved, this contract be modified to add a task to at least annually track and report on the impact and efficacy of the scope of services, including details on number of stakeholders engaged, greenhouse gas emissions reduced, and other metrics relevant given the scope of services.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Adina. This has been cleared with OSI? Mm-hmm. Is the amendment friendly? It's friendly.
Okay, that's all.
Further discussion of CA 6. All in favor? Opposed? CA 6 is approved. CA 7, resolution to approve a professional services agreement with VEG Michigan for various efforts to engage, educate, and work to advance sustainable plant-forward diets in the amount of $135,000. Moved by Councilmember Briggs, seconded by Councilmember Adina. Discussion, please, of CA 7. Councilmember Briggs.
All right. This is a repeat of basically what happened in CA 6. So again, this is work to encourage the more plant-based diets in our community, both from the public and also from amongst our restaurants, and outreach would be done by Veg Michigan. Again, I think it's just important that we are being explicit about the evaluation that we're doing as we're rolling out our millage. So this is the same resolve clause that I read in the last one, so I don't think I necessarily need to read it again. Let's
do it for fun.
Okay, for fun. Resolved, this contract be modified to add a task to at least annually track and report on the impact and efficacy of the scope of services, including details on the number of stakeholders engaged, greenhouse gases emissions reduced, and other metrics relevant given the scope of services.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Is the amendment friendly? Amendment friendly? I'm concluding that it is. Councilmember Briggs, you still have the floor.
Great, thanks. This, in both of these cases, allows us to make sure that, when we're considering these contracts in future years, we have some data to be able to be looking at, the community has, and also, of course, our staff in terms of determining whether or not we should be moving forward with these projects and which parts have been successful and which parts we might want to think differently about. So thanks so much.
Further discussion of CA7? All in favor? Opposed? CA7 is approved. CA19. Resolution to direct the city administrator to negotiate the terms for a services agreement with Recycle Ann Arbor for operation of the proposed new Ann Arbor Regional Drop-Off Station. Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of CA19. Councilmember Cornell.
For the city attorney has advised, so that I can just say, for reasons previously stated regarding a conflict of interest, I'd like to be recused from this vote.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the recusal. All in favor? Opposed? The recusal is approved. You may stand down. Further discussion of CA19. All in favor? Opposed? CA19 is approved, and welcome back. CA5. Resolution to approve the marijuana excise tax rebate fund grant agreement between the City of Ann Arbor, the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, and the Ann Arbor Housing Development Corporation, moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of CA5. Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. At the core of this resolution is the belief that all citizens, regardless of their past, deserve an opportunity to rebuild their lives and fully reintegrate into society. The mission is to break the cycle of recidivism, reduce social inequality, and address the systemic issues that often lead individuals into the criminal legal system in the first place. Many tenant-based voucher holders have had interactions with the criminal legal system. The trauma associated with these experiences often presents significant obstacles to social reintegration, employment, and housing stability. By providing trauma-informed, supportive services, we can address these barriers and help affected individuals begin their journey towards recovery and stability. The marijuana excise tax revenue offers a substantial resource that can directly benefit these individuals. As many of you know, the legal marijuana industry was born out of a recognition that criminal penalties for marijuana usage disproportionately affected certain communities, contributing to cycles of poverty, crime, and disenfranchisement. Thus, it's both fitting and redemptive that the financial gains from this industry are used to help heal the wounds inflicted by the very system it represents a departure from. This is not merely an investment in those impacted by the criminal legal system, but an investment in our communities, our shared values, and our collective future. We believe in second chances, in the potential for change, and in the power of supportive services to heal and restore. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilmember Briggs.
As liaison to the Housing Commission, just to expand on what Councilmember Harrison mentioned, it's great to see this contract in front of us. This was a big part of what we had approved during the budget in terms of our budget amendments. So Councilmember Harrison spoke to the $400,000 for trauma-informed case management services for tenant-based voucher households. There's also an additional $250,000 for low-income youth services, another $250,000 for eviction prevention, which I'd mentioned in my earlier comments. $325,000 for building out community space and purchasing furnishings for the 121 East Catherine project, and another $150,000 for collaboration with the Community Leadership Council on the planning, organizational development, and design related to activating and programming the non-residential community space on the first floor of the affordable housing development located at 121 East Catherine that will be coming. The center will be focused on planning activities on the historic Black neighborhood and business district where this development is located. So excited to support this tonight.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
I think when we worked on this in dedicating the funds in this way, it led to a larger discussion of how 400,000 can only do so much in our community and only go so far given the population that we're speaking of and the increasing costs not only to families impacted by the criminal legal system, but the wider community, and how it's a loss. It's a loss to our city when we don't address the immediate needs and future needs. So as you know, as much as we congratulate ourselves for being able to dedicate this money, it's not enough. It's not enough. And our role in social services, even though, you know, that's really managed by the county level, is still, it can still be significant. So I'm glad that we're being able to start this discussion, and hopefully we can expand it as we continue to look at future budgets when it comes to our role in policing, our role in unarmed crisis response, our role in the public safety and consideration for others, so that we can limit and hopefully decrease the impacts of the criminal legal system.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. CA 15, resolution to approve a cost-sharing agreement with the Downtown Development Authority for the Downtown Area Circulation Study in the amount of $209,674 and to appropriate $19,334 from the general fund unobligated fund balance. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion, please, of CA 15. Councilmember Ackman.
Thanks. So I was really happy to see this on our agenda this week. I feel like discussion has been floating around about this coming and other resolutions that we passed. This is going to really advance our efforts to build out multimodal transportation, including building out connections that extend an all ages, all abilities bike network, improve the safety of people riding, biking, and walking, as well as supporting the long-range plans of our bus system. And, you know, one thing I wanted to mention is that the proposal that's in front of us is really rooted in our comprehensive transportation plan. It focuses on how we can make street improvements, create like a low-stress bike network, as I mentioned, look at shared street possibilities and pedestrian malls, and update signals for the safety of people biking and walking. It also identifies a couple of key areas that are in need of rethinking in order to support safe, active transportation. One is restoring 5th Street to a two-way road, and then assessing the reconfiguration of the really complex intersection at Beeks, Broadway, Detroit, Division, and Cary. Just the fact that I have to name that many streets that come together can tell you how scary it can be to ride through that section of town. Because I think our transportation goals are so important, I'm proposing an amendment that has 3 whereas clauses. I sent it earlier, so I think that should arrive in your inboxes. This is to immediately follow, I think, the second whereas clause, and I will go ahead and read them. Whereas one of the 2 critical goals of the Moving Together Towards Vision Zero plan is to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries resulting from traffic crashes by 2025. Whereas one of 2 critical goals of the Moving Together Towards Vision Zero plan is to transition to a carbon neutral transportation system by 2030. And whereas both the Moving Together Toward Vision Zero plan and the A20 carbon neutrality plan call for a 50% reduction in vehicle miles traveled, which will require the city to reduce or eliminate the focus on congestion mitigation and sufficiency of parking, and instead assess prioritization of access for sustainable transportation modes.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Kazi Edwin. Discussion of the amendment. Is the amendment friendly? The amendment is friendly. Councilor Ackman, you still have the floor.
Excellent. I'm proposing this amendment because I think while the proposal itself, as I said, is reflective of these goals, ultimately this is going to result in a set of information and recommendations that we'll be making decisions about at this table. I want us all to remember these goals as we embark on this work and to continuously recommit to them as we make transportation decisions. And what this is really about is about creating a safe and comfortable environment for people walking, biking, and using the other forms of transit that are not reliant on single occupancy vehicle trips.
Further discussion of CA 15? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. We now come to a set of public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing, that is to say, the item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. To speak at a public hearing, you need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers in all cases, both here and online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to add Chapter 124, Initiation of Traffic Stops, to Title 9, Police Regulations of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? You need not raise your hand, just come up to the podium when it is free.
My name is Blaine Coleman. This ordinance is at least 100 years overdue, so I'm not going to break my arm trying to pat the city council on the back for it. It's long, long overdue, and it's nowhere near enough. Of course it will be passed. Of course it should be passed, but it's not reparations. It's not expanding college placement and job placement on a massive scale. These are things the community has to have. It's not 10% black admissions at the University of Michigan. It's one thing, and I hope the community feels confident enough to come in here and get another victory demanding reparations on a big enough scale to make up for what's been stolen from the community, which is actually $97 trillion. According to a book by Jason Hickel called The Divide. I hope the community will build on this thing that's being passed tonight and demand a drastic expansion of the neutral zones program called Future Core, which doesn't just prepare students for college, it gets students into college, pays for their college, and furthermore, it gets them actually into jobs, not just job training. And this program, Future Core, should be drastically expanded. And that's not all. This city council has a lot of relationships with the University of Michigan. This city council can force the University of Michigan to keep its promise of 10% black admissions. These are all things the community can demand. And don't be frightened by the Supreme Court ruling. There's still a window in that ruling. There's a window in that ruling that says your experiences dealing with racism, confronting racism, overcoming racism, those experiences can be taken into account for college admissions. They can be taken into account for college admissions. So you have the power. You have the power. You have the power to push the city council for real reparations, massive reparations. You have the power to push the city council for a massive expansion of the Future Core program under city supervision to get every child all the way through college and into a good job. You have the power to push the city council to force University of Michigan to keep its promise of 10% black admissions. There is quite a lot you have the power to do. Don't break your arm thanking the city council tonight. There is a whole lot more work that they should have done.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. I wanted to share from a perspective of someone who has dealt with your police officers. The Black Lives Matter mural, as you know, was desecrated, and I called the police. Why? Because it was a crime, right? Felony, actually. And I had one of my Caucasian sisters there with me, and I was visibly upset because for me, it's more than just yellow paint on the ground. It's more than just words on the ground. They're expressions that we all need to be reminded of the value in Black lives. Your officer, noticing me visibly upset, walked right past me to my Caucasian sister. And she said to him, "I didn't call you. Well, no, that's not true, because she did call after I called. But she said, this is the individual that reached out to you all first. And he came back and he had the most arrogant, nasty attitude of someone that is dealing with the public and someone that is upset, right? It was very disturbing to me. At that point, it was more than just the mural being desecrated. Now it's the way that your police officers are handling Black folks, showing that they do have bias. So when you vote on this today, I want you to understand that this is not a problem that's over there. The problem of bias rests right here in the city of Ann Arbor with your officers. Let me take it a step further. I asked to speak to a supervisor who never showed up. I asked to have the chief call me, never called. And you don't have a problem with bias here? No, we do. And so while, yes, we are grateful and we got some thumbs up of people that are going to pass this tonight, there's always more work to do. And this is not to come in and say that what you did was bad, but it's we always got to lean more into the work and understand, lastly, that unless this has more meat as far as enforcement is concerned, we're going to be dealing with what the county is dealing with right now. Because in the county, on day one, our prosecutor passed no pretext stops. But guess what? They're still happening. They are still happening, and their officers are not being reprimanded for making these stops. I am asking that you all make an amendment tonight to put in that these officers must follow this ordinance. This isn't a resolution. This isn't a suggestion. This is an ordinance that needs just a little more meat so that we can hold these officers accountable if they continue to do pretext stops. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wants to say, give us back the money you stole? 97 trillion is a lot
Yep.
of money. Okay, you were very kind, sister. It's not bias, it's racism. It is racism. Racism is up and down the ladder in this country. Every level of city organization, country organization suffers from massive racism. And we have that in Ann Arbor. We pay these cops $30 million a year. It's the top billing in this town. And we have police violence against people of color. And we have people of color squeezed out of this town. More segregation in this town. This town is a very segregated place. It's shameful. I am here to say that your ordinance is not even going to scratch the surface of what you owe the people of color in this country. Start talking about reparations to the tune of $97 trillion. Start talking about reparations to the people whom you enslaved and you forced to work violently for hundreds of years, and you collected the money. Start talking about giving it back. No more discussion about this and that. Oh, should we, shouldn't we? You owe them. You owe people of color in this country $97 trillion, and that is at minimum wage. So start thinking about paying up. Start thinking about stopping the racism that is all over your systems everywhere. And I will run for city council, and I will make sure that I will replace this lady, Ms. Jen Iyer, who in her own way has done everything to support racist Israel Defense Forces friends, and she has done everything, collected money from them, and I will be running against her. And thank you very much. Reparations, reparations. Your little ordinance is not enough. It's not enough.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this public hearing? Just come on up.
Hello, y'all. So on the topic of pretext stops, I kind of want to just put a face to the issue here. So I am a let me bring attention to my shirt. This is a 2014 Black Student Union shirt from here at the University of Michigan. This is the ethos of U of M and Ann Arbor to a certain extent for who we really are. If y'all can't see, it's a Black Power shirt with the Muhammad Ali quote in the back. This is who we really are. On the topic of these pretext stops and how they affect poor Black people like myself, they can have devastating consequences to people's livelihoods people's livelihoods moving forward with their lives long after the interactions have occurred. Pretext stops often lead to contraband charges and all types of, resisting arrest and fleeing and eluding and all types of other issues that had nothing to do with keeping the public safe, fundamentally. As things stand now, I have my own issues with the, I don't want to incriminate myself, but I have my own issues with the prosecutor's office as things stand right now, stemming from this very issue. I have to say this publicly, that it has been the mostly Democratic elected leaders in the prosecutor's office and in the sheriff's office that have offered the most resistance to this kind of narrative. If you ask them, this stuff just isn't happening, right? They solved racism in 2020 upon the election of Ellie Savin and company. And this type of narrative is very frustrating, especially from young Black men who don't see very much representation in these kinds of spaces. When we do bring up our meritorious, legitimate grievances, we're often, marginalized and castigated as crazy, as rude, as exaggerating or inflating our own experiences. But then we tend to hear them again during election cycles for people to get elected. So I don't have a prepared statement, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to share my personal experiences. I'm not a crazy, dangerous criminal thug, as the prosecutor's office would like to portray me as, basically. I'm just a poor Black guy, just trying to live. This is the reality of folks in Ypsi. Sometimes we have broken taillights or, what may you. Should we have to face constant existential challenges to our lives? I don't think so, and I pray to God that something, as Ms. Trichet said, something with more meat and more enforcement, because I'm sorry, I'll wrap up, but I stand before you today. I'm a living counterexample to the supposed progressive policies we have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Oh, ain't nobody else getting up, huh? All right, I want to share something with you from a different standpoint, slightly similar though. So everybody in the room listen, white folks pay close attention. This is a conversation that I had with somebody recently. So I'm speaking from a point of privilege. As white folks, we have the ability to kind of look at these things and do incremental change, because we're kind of in the catbird seat. Incremental change kind of serves us in some ways, and it makes us feel good about what we're doing. You have to understand what's not even being fully expressed from the crowd, because some people don't want to get up in here because they're going to lay into you, because there are generations of pain behind this. The time for incremental changes have passed. And so when we have these opportunities, when we have ARPA funds, when we have excise money, when we have things like this, we cannot do business as usual. We cannot do status quo. We cannot do something that is incremental, because these things swing back. What happens 2 years when money gets tight again? Where are these things going to come from? We're going to be right back in the same situation. So everybody's telling you out here they're holding you accountable. And what they're holding you accountable is they want you to do something grand. They want you to not be afraid to fall on your frickin' face. This is not a political issue. This is a matter of people's lives. And pseudo-liberalism that often takes place in Ann Arbor is worse than people who outright tell you they don't care about your issues. So you're hearing a lot of upset. You're hearing a lot of angst. I'm using my privilege at this point in time to tell you the day of the middle-aged white male was long and it was fruitful. The reason why I didn't want to come up here right away is because it isn't my time to speak. Other people's voice need to be heard. And you're right, 400,000 is a start. It is a small start, is a drop in the bucket. I don't know if 97 trillion is the number, but I know 400,000 isn't.
That's right. 97 trillion is the number.
So, I ask you to consider these things because people do pay attention to what happens in Ann Arbor, maybe more than they should. But the fact is, you can set precedent for other people. You can show people what is possible. You can be genuinely progressive and make a difference. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please.
Hi, my name is Shannon Armstrong. I just want to talk a little bit about, this is my first time talking to City Council, sorry. So I was talking a while back to a friend who, we were in the car and we got pulled over, he was driving, I can't drive. And it was a small thing and he was like, oh, you're about to witness police violence. We know this unnecessary stops lead to unnecessary contact between community members and law enforcement and oftentimes end in unnecessary use of force. I want my friends to be able to feel safe driving. I've personally noticed that I can make better, safer decisions when my amygdala is in neutral, and young drivers, like my friends of color, are at increased risk of accident. And I want my friends to be able to focus their mental energy on driving safely and not worrying about being pulled over for something petty by the cops. I also, the one other thing I want to bring up, I want to support what Tricia mentioned about adding provisions to make this ordinance more meaty, as well as future core funding. I am a future core participant, reparations, and affordable housing money. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who'd like to?
Hello, good evening. My name is Paul Fleming. I live in Ward 5 in the city. And while I'm here in my role as a community member, I'm also a faculty member at the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan. And I focus my research on and teaching on approaches to public safety. I'm here in support of the driving equality ordinance, and the testimony that's already been shared by residents is critically important, and I just want to add another perspective as well. The proposed ordinance is in line with a policy statement by the American Public Health Association. The American Public Health Association is a 150-year-old body that represents a broad base of public health professionals. I and many of my colleagues at the School of Public Health are members of this association. And in their policy statement, the organization urges municipal governments to, quote, advance equity and justice by decriminalizing and eliminating officer enforcement of regulations such as minor traffic violations, including expired registration and broken taillights, among many other things that the policy statement says. I invite you to find the policy statement here at this QR code, as well as other city policies that the city can adopt to really address this issue. The American Public Health Association has made this policy recommendation based on years and years of rigorous research showing the harms of everyday policing, including traffic stops, the harms that can have on residents, especially marginalized residents. This ordinance will also complement the unarmed response program that the city will soon be funding. Ultimately, in a safe and equitable community, the research shows that interactions between residents and police should be minimized and access to supportive services should be expanded. The driving equality ordinance will help reduce the possible pathways to jail or prison, and the unarmed response program will help increase supportive services for those in need. The synergy of these two initiatives will lead to not just better public safety, but a community where there are better opportunities for all members to thrive. In public health, we try to prevent things before they're happening, and this driving equality ordinance will help prevent discrimination, prevent the potential for police violence, and also prevent pathways to jails and prisons. I urge you to align our city with this research on the issue and pass the ordinance as a starting point to address these issues. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aiden Kingwell. I have lived in the city of Ann Arbor for almost 6 years now. You can also take one look at me and know that I am not someone who is personally affected by the matter at issue today. But I wanted to come forward in my capacity as an engineer, as someone who has received training in mathematics and particularly statistics to speak on this issue. We know that racism, and in particular pretextual racism in terms of both traffic stops and stops while Black people are simply walking, while are simply shopping, while are simply going about their daily lives, are mathematically demonstrable. This is something which is proven. I think that, as many people have said before me, this is an excellent first step, but we also need to take a statistical and sane and racially equitable approach to examining other issues that involve escalation from a minor infraction, which, as we have discussed previously, may not even warrant criminal punishment whatsoever, and escalate that into a much larger issue. As I said, these are issues that are not only affecting members of the community, especially people of color, while they are driving. It affects them while they are going about their daily business, and I think we need to examine this issue in the broader context of the protections to the community that are brought by enforcing these principles versus the damage to the community, including escalation to use of force and potentially even death, in a broader context than just that which relates to motor vehicles. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Number one, listen to Black women. Listen to our brothers and sisters who need our support, who need forward movement, who need progress that moves quickly and swiftly. We need gatekeepers who no longer hold on to their pennies. We need resources to be redistributed in a manner that takes care of our community and all of our people, all of them. So please, this ordinance is huge for you all, but it's just a tiny drop. Just a tiny drop. So I'll leave you with this. Listen to Black women.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Bonnie Billups Jr., and I just want to come up and say that I'm very much in support of this ordinance. I also sit on the ICPOC as a commissioner, but more importantly, I represent my 16 children, my 17 grandchildren, and a whole bunch of other Black men and Black women who I speak for who might not be here today. We are constantly talking, and right now the big thing is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're also looking and we're hearing about how great Ann Arbor is, right? And we constantly see that in all the polls and all the things. It's the best place to live, the best place to raise children. And so Ann Arbor can step out and say that we're not only we're setting standards that way, but we're setting standards with equity for everybody. That's what this ordinance will do. It'll also assist police officers, right? Because the police officers are here to protect and serve. They can work on solving real crimes, other things, and not have to be bound by using these other tactics to figure out if there is a crime. So I support this ordinance, and I'm hoping that the council, that you guys will all vote in support of it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey. You're killing it tonight. This is kind of hype in here. Yeah, Councilmember Harrison, I feel like you opened a Pandora's box, because now we're like, this is step one of actually, it could just be like super quick. It could just we could just do reparations. Yeah, because we definitely know that police don't stop crime. They don't reduce crime. Imprisonment doesn't decrease crime at all. What we need is public housing, education, community spaces, and money, reparations.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say. When I was 15, I was violently arrested by AAPD. Because I had a friend, we were drinking beer in the forest, and we had a fire, and then cops showed up, and then my friend ran, and then I got something pointed at me. It was probably a taser, but I thought it was a gun. And then I was laying on the ground for a long time, and my body was shaking, and so I kind of don't like cops after that. I can't imagine what it'd be like in that situation or in general if I were black, if I were brown, etc. Yeah, let's take this energy and let's keep going with it. Let's build some housing. Let's build some public housing, socially controlled public housing. And let's inject some money into the black community. And also, free Palestine.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andre Watson. I'm really proud of the city for, approaching a creative solution, and I applaud you and your colleagues for the support. As a resident of Ann Arbor, we do have a long ways to go. There's a lot of opportunity, and I do hope this becomes a catalyst for that change. And as far as the officers, my experience here with officers has been really good, to be candid with you, but I'm not naive. I've lived a while as an African American here in America, and I've had the harassment, I've had the stops, and I've had the trauma that sits into many of us when we have the stops. And I do think that this ordinance will give the spark, hopefully, that the nation will galvanize with, and that the officers will learn how to reconcile in whatever capacity they need to. Those who are, shouldn't be doing the job, let them get fired, let them be removed. Those who are wise enough to adapt, enjoy your jobs, have less stress, and treat people the way you would want to be treated. I really pray that sentiment becomes the prevailing energy from this spark. I do think Ann Arbor has a lot more to give as it relates to the credibility, the notoriety, and the platform. I think we've been sitting relaxed in our platform for too long as a progressive city. I did personally have an experience with City of Ann Arbor. It was terrible. I was naive to that experience. So I do, as others have suggested, believe that we have other opportunities to make this a better city. And I don't know, I'm not a professional at this level of advice, but discomfort is solution. So really, really attempt to stay in the room when it's uncomfortable and have a little faith in the area. And I think we'll find more opportunities and really become the city that most of us are here to live in and to enjoy. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Alicia Dyer. I served in law enforcement for 10 years, so speaking on that perspective, I agree with a lot of comments that my colleagues have made. Thank you, Cynthia Harrison, and really all of City Council for the work that you've done on this. Traffic stops are dangerous. We made a decision in this country long ago to use the police for literally almost everything under the sun when it comes to safety. Traffic stops, when you're on the roadway as an officer, you can get hit, all kinds of things can happen, and then you're causing trauma for the people when you pull them over. No one likes getting pulled over. I think the majority of people in this room, when they get pulled over, their anxiety is gonna go up, they're gonna feel uncomfortable. And then for people that are in the Black and brown community, there's a heightened fear that you might not live on that traffic stop. When I was an officer, it was very hard for me to understand that when I first started, when I was talking to my friends. Because I thought, well, I'm just pulling you over for speeding, or I'm just pulling you over to remind you that you have a headlight out. And it took a long time in this career to really understand from my friends that we need to be more aware of the presence that we bring to people. When we walk into rooms, when we are sitting at the park in the patrol car, when we pull people over, we can cause stress and anxiety. And there's traffic stops that I've done, and I've seen how scared people were on those stops. And so when there's situations where we can avoid those stops, we should do it. And shout out to Pullover Prevention. They've been doing a lot of work with fixing cars so people don't have to risk being stopped for these really low-level offenses. But if we started traffic stop policies right now, I don't think we would have the police stopping people for these extremely minor infractions. And so this ordinance is a step in the right direction, and we really have to do more to restructure traffic enforcement, because we know that traffic stops kill people, they injure people, and at the end of the day, safety needs to be the primary concern, not using the police in a way that they really have other things that they could be doing that would be a lot more beneficial than pulling people over for things like a crack in the windshield or loud exhaust or poverty-related things when you're driving a car. And so I want to thank you all again. I really appreciate the process and all the collaboration. This has brought a lot of people together, and I'll rescind my time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Laquan Hill. I want to share a story with you real quick. I want y'all to imagine an individual who made some mistakes in his life, right? And he did his time. He gets out. He changed his life. He did everything he's supposed to do while incarcerated. Came up with goals, came up with plans. He had minimum family support. One of his family members donated a car to him. The car has been sitting in the yard for however long. It needed a couple things fixed on it. But this individual, prideful, he wanted to do something better than selling drugs, robbing people, right? But it just so happens the only jobs that was provided livable wage was in Ann Arbor. So he took a chance. He said, no, I'm gonna go fill out many applications I possibly can. He has his driver's license. The car is legally supposed to be on the road, but he just didn't have the funds to fix the headlight. The headlight from the kids that was playing on the block one day, playing ball. You know, we all did that once before. You didn't get your windows busted out before, right? Well, just imagine kids being kids and the headlight is busted. A guy coming home, he want a job, that's all he want. He don't want to go back to prison. He don't want to go back to the things that he used to do that got him back in prison, so he took a chance. He drove down Arbor and got pulled over. He got the ticket, came back, he's dead now. He's dead now. You know why? Because he got the efforts. I tried. This was my chance. I tried. All because of a traffic stop. So again, this ordinance is good, and I thank you. I thank y'all. But what good is it going to be if one of y'all don't have the courage to make that amendment, to make it real, to force these officers to actually obey by it? I'll leave y'all with that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing?
I just like to speak briefly. For those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Kevin Karpiak. I'm a professor at Eastern Michigan University and author of a report that's been mentioned a couple of times today on traffic stop disparities here in Ann Arbor. There's been a lot said about it. I didn't know if I had anything else to say or add, but one thing I would like to add that I've really enjoyed the conversation, hearing the stories today, because they're not part of the report. I think they're actually probably more important for helping shape the decision here tonight. But what the study did find, it was that there are disparities here in Ann Arbor. That is incontrovertible, and that the largest disparities have to do with the specific types of stops we're talking about tonight, which are equipment violations. Now, we've come to that realization. Some people already knew that here in this room. Some people didn't. This is one way to show it. But I'd also like to point out that these kinds of efforts, I'd really like to applaud the thought and time and carefulness and care that went into thinking about what we can do about these problems we identify. And especially what I enjoy, or as a citizen, as a resident of Ann Arbor, as well as a researcher, what I really applaud about the ordinance on the table tonight is that it really shifts the onus on taking responsibility for our safety to this room, right? That there are other kinds of responses that could have occurred and maybe still should occur. Maybe we should think about different kinds of training, different kinds of recruitment, different kinds of technologies. I don't know. Those could maybe be down the line. But we are responsible for our safety in this room and at this table. And I really applaud the effort to take that reins in the hands tonight. And I look forward to seeing it passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, we have a few people online. Caller with the phone number ending in 748. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marta Nelson, and I'm the Director of Government Strategy for the Vera Institute of Justice. Vera works to end mass incarceration, protect immigrants' rights, and build safe, thriving communities. Vera is leading a cohort of 10 cities and counties from across the country who are interested in improving traffic safety and reducing racial disparities in traffic enforcement. Councilmember Harrison is part of this learning community. Backed by the evidence, cities from Philadelphia to Memphis, states from Virginia to Oregon have enacted policies that remove police from enforcement of non-safety related stops. By Vera's count, at least 12 jurisdictions nationwide have passed such policies, while at least 10 have done so by police order and 4 by prosecutorial policy. Extensive research shows that these policies provide 4 key benefits. First, research shows that policies like the Driving Equality Ordinance improve traffic safety by focusing police stops on unsafe driving behavior. Second, ending non-safety related stops can promote public safety and community trust, as the frequency of these stops compounds trust in government institutions such as police departments and prosecutors' offices, which depend on the public's cooperation to solve crime. Third, these policies spare more drivers of the physical, psychological, and economic harms caused by traffic stops. And fourth, these policies reduce harmful racial disparities, as we have heard tonight about the recent report in Ann Arbor that found significant racial disparities across the board, but particularly for equipment violations. And the findings in Ann Arbor are consistent with research nationwide finding greater disparities in non-safety related stops than in safety related stops. Eliminating these stops works after Philadelphia instituted its policy on low-level stops. Traffic stops involving black men went down 54%. Now, opponents of these policies tend to argue that they're necessary for fighting crime and keeping the roads safe, both of which are unsupported by evidence. Regarding public safety, these stops rarely result in the recovery of guns or other contraband. A national study found that the police recovered guns in fewer than 1% of non-safety related stops, while another study found that the 8 largest California police departments recovered guns in just 0.5% of all traffic stops. And regarding road safety, banning low-level stops does not prohibit police from making traffic stops due to more serious equipment violations like 2 missing headlights or anything causing visibly reckless driving. A Connecticut analysis found that the equipment violations enforced in low-level stops do not contribute to accidents. Finally, polling shows that policies like the Driving Equality Ordinance have strong bipartisan voter support. Voters clearly understand that there are better ways to handle these issues, as do members of Ann Arbor who are considering this initiative.
Time.
So I urge you to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Hughes, do you have a comment?
Hi, I'm just here to say I support the Driving Equality Ordinance, and please pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 413. Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hi, yes. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Summer Berman, and I've lived and worked in and around Ann Arbor for most of the last 30 years, and I am calling to encourage you to vote yes on the Driving Equality Ordinance. I will be brief because you've heard from lots of folks already, and I would like to second basically everyone who's spoken in support of this ordinance. In addition to all of the insightful testimony that you've heard here tonight and all of the elements that are listed in the findings section of the proposed ordinance, I'd also like to emphasize that people with mental illness are also disproportionately represented in the criminal legal system, and Black people with mental illness even more so. According to NAMI Michigan, about 1 in 4 people with a serious mental illness has been arrested by the police at some point in their lifetime, and about 2 in 5 adults in jail or prison have a history of mental illness. Jail is not the right place for these folks to end up. If we stop picking up people for non-criminal activity and stop them from entering the prison pipeline, we not only work to reduce the racial inequity in our community, as you've heard all throughout the evening, but we can also work towards getting people with mental health conditions the medical and social services they need, rather than continuing to fill our jails.
I hope that you will support this ordinance, and thank you for their time.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 145, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hello, my name is Aria Shugat. There's not really much that I can add that hasn't already been said, but I do want to say that, I'm sure this is going to be passed, but I believe that when it comes to things like this, we shouldn't do it incrementally. We should take big steps, not baby steps. Some of you are going to have to be willing to fall on your political sword to save lives, even if it might cost you the next election. Ann Arbor can say that it's a progressive place with progressive people and progressive policies, but the city tells a different story. I think that Ann Arbor as a whole has become complacent with this idea that this is a place where everyone is accepted for their differences and everyone is, huggy and, unbiased. And that's not. I come from a place that's full of plenty of bigotry and people of, various beliefs. And Ann Arbor feels like a larger version of the place I grew up in, which is not a good thing. To some extent. Push to help people. Push hard. And don't stop at just, putting this into effect. Like people have stated. Make sure it's enforced. Even if you have to tattoo it into every officer's forehead. Make sure that this is a thing that people know is going into law and needs to be enforced so that people's lives will be saved. The police may primarily target black and brown people, and that's absolutely a problem, but the effects of this will bleed over into other groups and make everyone safer and have less interactions with the police that cause all manner of stress and headaches. So I know you're going to pass this, but you have to push harder. You have to do more, amend it, do whatever you have to do, save lives. That's what we elected you to do.
30
Do
seconds.
it.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't have any other callers on the line with their hands up.
Seeing no one further, this public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, an ordinance to amend section 2.1 and add section 213 to chapter 26, solid waste management. Solid waste management of Title II, utilities and services of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
I think that the solid waste thing is, you need to fix that. But I wanted to just tell you really quickly, because I forgot to say this, that what you all are repairing here is years of atrocities against the black community. When you think about the history of policing, in the history of policing, they were slave catchers. And they're still out trying to catch slaves, some of them with that mentality. So what we're doing here, and I'm asking you all, please make this amendment. Make this more than pomp and circumstance. Make it more than just performative. If you do not make it this amendment, these officers are not going to obey this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in House who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers online for this hearing.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. A1, we have before us our regular session meeting minutes of June 20, 2023, moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Redina. Discussion, please, of the minutes. May I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? Moved by Councilmember, oh, I've already done that. All in favor of the minutes, please say aye. Opposed? The minutes are twice moved and approved. B1, an ordinance to add section 124, initiation of traffic stops of Title IX, police regulations of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Redina. Discussion, please, at B1, Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. All right. The Driving Equality Ordinance holds profound significance for current and former city residents, workers, and visitors. By passing this ordinance, we are communicating to people across the nation who have feared or suffered the consequences of low-level secondary traffic stops that Ann Arbor welcomes you. We are saying that as a city council, we understand that these stops have long incited fear, tension, and sadly have even cost lives in communities. At the first reading, we grappled with the weight of American policing's history and trauma, underscoring the need for transformative change. We heard heartbreaking narratives from Ann Arbor residents and visitors about their encounters with police during these stops. These were stark reminders of the pressing need to reform how law enforcement interacts with those they protect. I'd like to extend my appreciation to the Ann Arbor Police Department for understanding that this is not an indictment on their profession, but a stride towards healing historical harm and fostering trust within our community. I and the rest of the community appreciate your diligence and commitment to keeping our city safe. Let's not overlook that this ordinance also serves as a protective measure for our officers. Over the last decade, traffic fatalities have been one of the leading causes of officer deaths nationwide. By curtailing unnecessary traffic stops, we can reduce this risk. The Driving Equality Ordinance is all about safety. This ordinance plays an essential part in achieving our city's Vision Zero goals. It aims to enhance road safety for everyone in Ann Arbor, be they drivers, cyclists, or pedestrians. We've seen commendable progress in reducing car accidents over the last 5 years, yet over 2,500 accidents a year and 17 fatal and incapacitating injury crashes in 2021, there is still much work to do. By eliminating these low-level stops, we can redirect our police resources to tackling serious traffic offenses, making our roads safer. Furthermore, it seeks to create a safer environment for our Black and brown drivers who have been traumatized by nationwide police violence. A recent report shows that non-white drivers in Ann Arbor are stopped and searched more frequently than white drivers. No Black person in America can escape the fear and trauma of traffic stops. As a Black mother, I know this trauma all too well. Every Black parent has to have the talk with their children about how to survive a traffic stop. The resulting long-term physical and psychological harm is well documented in academic research. And I would like, at this point, to make an amendment that I've circulated with Clerk Baldry. And I believe we have staff here to
It's been, that's all right, no worries. It's been forwarded and is included in the packet, so we don't need to read it. But is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Watson. So you have the floor, and you're correct. I believe there is a staff introduction with respect to the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jen Janetsky. I'm a Senior Assistant City Attorney. I have been the City Attorney assigned to the Driving Equality Ordinance. There is an amendment on the floor. I know you've had the opportunity to read it. We provided it in advance. The question that's been presented with respect to that is, please explain the intent behind the proposed amendments to the Driving Equality Ordinance. Legislative intent is always an important issue, particularly to lawyers. It is exponentially more important when the piece of legislation that you're working on is a matter of first impression. And that is the case here. We are leading the way with respect to Michigan, We are the first community to propose such legislation, and that does make it important to be clear with respect to intent. So I want to be sure to answer that question in as public a way as I can. And so I would say this, with respect to the proposed amendments that you have before you, the intent is just this. It is to clarify and strengthen the language of the ordinance so that the public is clearly advised of their rights and law enforcement is clearly advised of their duties. Both of those things are essential in drafting. They're essential with respect to legislative intent, and I wanted to be sure they were clearly stated in a public way. I also want to clearly state that they do not change the substance of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Harrison, you still have the floor? Now with respect to the amendment.
Yes. So this ordinance serves as a declaration that no individual should fear unnecessary secondary traffic stops. We understand that this is a concern not just for our residents, but for everyone who works, visits, or travels through our city. Our city has always been a place that respects and values diversity, and our ordinance reflects that commitment. This ordinance signifies a big step forward in our quest for fairness and justice in our city. It demonstrates our commitment to ensuring that all people are treated equally by our law enforcement officers, irrespective of their background or circumstances. I know that some of you have expressed concern over the part of the ordinance that prohibits officers from initiating a traffic stop for loud exhaust. I want to be sure to alleviate your concerns with respect to loud exhaust stops, as none of us wants an Ann Arbor where noise negatively affects children playing in our neighborhoods, impacts our ability to conduct business, or lessens the enjoyment of our outdoor spaces. Please understand that this ordinance does not prohibit traffic enforcement in any way. Citations can still be issued in accordance with the law. Changes can still be sought as part of a larger safety-related stop or in conjunction with the investigation of a traffic crash. It doesn't mean that we are ignoring or tolerating loud exhaust, but rather we are enforcing this violation in a new way that does not cause trauma or disproportionately impacts any specific demographic. We are ensuring that Ann Arbor is not only free from loud exhaust, but far more importantly, free from discrimination and trauma.
Further discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Watson on the amendment? You don't need to? On the main motion, fair point. Is the amendment friendly to the body? Amendment's friendly. Councilmember Watson. On the main motion.
Thank you. Thank you to Councilmember Harrison for all her work on this. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I'd like to just add a couple personal notes. It's hard not to sit here and think about family, especially when I recognize so many people that were sitting out here and spoke earlier today. You know, my mom was raised black in Detroit, and my dad was raised black in Mount Vernon, New York, and they both chose to move to Ann Arbor shortly after I was born because it would be a better place to raise their black son. Their upbringings gave them no illusions about the risks for black men growing up anywhere in America, but they thought that by teaching me, they could help alleviate some of the worries that we've all talked about today about police stops and what to do when you're stopped. Even so, a few years ago, when I heard a pop after backing into a pole in a parking lot, my first thought was not about confirming the type of damage that occurred, but rather a silent prayer that I had not cracked my taillight, because I immediately feared the potential of being stopped for it later that night. Luckily, I had only cracked the plastic casing, and no white light escaped from the fixture, which allowed me to breathe a sigh of relief. This is the kind of mental weight the specter of these stops causes in black and brown communities. Let's pass this ordinance tonight and lift the worries about these secondary stops from the minds of minorities and from the minds of people who simply can't afford to fix their cars. Let's also lift the task of these stops from the plate of police officers who have larger public safety issues to deal with. As the first black man to sit around this table since Larry Hunter, who represented Ward 1, like Councilmember Harrison does, until 1997, I think it is quite poignant that Councilmember Hunter had his own direct experience with the secondary stop. He was arrested by Washtenaw County Sheriff's deputies after being a passenger in a vehicle that was stopped for a cracked taillight in 1991, the year I was born. His Ward 1 colleague, Anne Marie Coleman, a white woman, was outraged. She was quoted in the Ann Arbor News saying, "Everyone reports that when they have a tail light out and they're stopped by police, they get a warning. I'm speechless that they did all they did with Mr. Chauncey and Mr. Hunter." Mr. Hunter ended up winning his case and having his charges dropped. But the question becomes, if a council member who knew his rights and knew he had done nothing wrong could still be thrown in jail as a result of a secondary stop, how can we ensure that anyone will get a fair shake? 32 years later, this ordinance change will come too late for Mr. Hunter, but I'm proud to support it tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Wow. Thank you, Councilmember Watson, and Councilmember Harrison. Thank you again for bringing this forward. I said it last time, I'll say it again. As soon as you brought it forward, I was right on board, and I know the discussion at the beginning was resolution or ordinance, and you know, my feeling was go ahead with the ordinance because the ordinance does carry the weight of enforcement. I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to, before I get to that, just kind of go through again. We've talked a lot about the study that was done, and I just want to reiterate that, you know, the analysis identified significant disparities across every single dimension examined. Non-white motorists being stopped and searched more frequently. And it's the searched part that really was a gut punch for me, because how just absolutely demoralizing and, you know, to be searched for no reason because you had a cracked taillight and somebody feels like they have a feeling about you. So I'm really happy that we're doing this tonight. I want to get to the enforcement question, and I'm wondering if we have somebody on staff who can address this, because we are doing this as an ordinance, which means that there are consequences if our police officers do not follow this new rule. And I'm not sure we don't have our interim chief here tonight, which I'm surprised at. So who can answer this question?
The city attorney's office could, but that would be privileged. And if you would like to vote to go into a closed session, I'd be happy to address that, but can't in open session.
Is the chief available on Zoom? Is our city administrator available on Zoom?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
The question is with respect to enforcement of the ordinance?
So the provisions of the ordinance, the next step, once it's actually passed and takes effect, is the ordinance speaks for itself, but the accountability measures would have to be written into general orders of the police department and procedures around if the ordinance is violated, then what happens. That's not something that's been worked out in advance, but that would be the next procedural step that we would do at staff level once the ordinance is actually law.
Okay. Thank you. I think that that's something.
You're at your 3 minutes at this point.
Okay, I will come back around to it.
Thank you.
I have more to say.
Further discussion of the main motion as amended? Councilmember Song.
I can't thank Councilmember Harrison enough for leading this effort. This is when we spoke. She shared how this has been. This is decades in the making. So having her here at the table makes such a difference in seeing this work done. And I was really happy to hear from community members, researchers, because this work is also backed by research, public health data. The city and the county had committed to racism as a public health crisis back in 2020. And I think during the pandemic, we kind of thought that went to like health disparities, access to health services, the life expectancy differences across our zip codes, right? There's a 14-year life expectancy difference for Black folks in Ann Arbor, Ypsi. But public health is also related to public safety. The quality of life is related to these issues. And when I spoke to Dr. Paul Fleming a couple years ago, one statistic really stood out for me, and that was that death by police is the 6th leading cause of death for Black men. It's a fact. It's backed by data. And for us to, as local officials in our own limited ways, to respond to that, I mean, when you hear that, you can't forget that. And that was, that's not only a call to action, but also a call for conversations. So in a number of ways with our community members, we see community leaders here, Bonnie at a Peace Neighborhood. We've talked to other social service agency directors, but I also talked to neighbors. And one local father had expressed how, and I shared this with Cynthia earlier, that his worries are not just daily for his son, for his teenager, but given the violence in this country, he actually had to send him abroad for the summer. He felt better sending him out of this country than staying here as a Black townie. We know, another data reference that I had shared with Cynthia was also from a report on racial equity framework for gun violence prevention. This is from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and the DC Justice Labs. Black men are stopped by police, arrested, denied bail, convicted and wrongfully convicted, and issued long sentences at much higher rates than their white counterparts. As a result, nearly half of all Black men will be arrested before the age of 23. I think we like to think Ann Arbor is an exception to every rule, but we're not an exception, and we are responsible to do what we can. And when you hear this data and you hear these stories, you can't ignore it. And I'm
Councilmember.
relieved to vote in favor. And thank you, Cynthia.
Further discussion? Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. So as we proceed and hopefully pass this tonight, this isn't the end of it. I think, we definitely have some next steps here, including following up on what that policy will be, that the police department hammers out, making sure that it's public, and making sure that our residents know the proper way, or the way that they can file a complaint through ICPOC, or through the department, however that's decided. So I think those are critical steps in terms of carrying this out, making sure that it does what we want it to do, and that we have that accountability. And then I hope we will review the data again at the earliest possible moment. I would look to our data experts to say, how long do we need? 6 months, a year, to see if it's working, and to see what changes, if any, we may need to make. But for tonight, I think we've got a really, really solid ordinance here, and I'm so happy to support it.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Thank you again, Councilmember Harrison. I know I thanked you at the last meeting, but I can't share enough appreciation for the work that you've put into this, and to all of the community members who came forward and spoke and continued to share their stories, both tonight and at the last meeting. I also wanted to directly address, we did not hear any of it tonight, but I have certainly heard from some residents who expressed maybe some frustration with the inclusion of loud exhaust in this ordinance because of the annoyance that it causes. And I feel so strongly about this that I think we have to address it in some way, even though we didn't hear it from someone at the table tonight, or from someone at the podium tonight. we heard at the last meeting about an individual who simply couldn't afford to fix their exhaust and was fearful every time that they had to drive their car because of the threat of a stop. And one, we have to stop criminalizing poverty in that way. But I also, from my experience, there is a souped up motorcycle that I see often near my neighborhood that every time it drives by, everybody has to stop their conversation because it's so loud. And nobody's calling the police on that person because 30 seconds after they've gone by, we've forgotten about it and our lives have moved on. And we have to stop allowing this comfort trade-off for this modest inconvenience or this modest annoyance to be a trade-off for the true trauma and harm and danger that individuals may be in if the police were called on them or they were stopped for that reason. And so that is why this is included in the ordinance as well. And I'm grateful that we didn't hear from folks coming out in droves asking us to pull it out. I'm grateful that none of my colleagues wanted to do that either. And then I also just wanted to very briefly give voice because we've heard a lot about the impact that this has on members of the Black and Brown community here in Ann Arbor and folks who are coming to Ann Arbor. But we actually haven't heard a lot about also the increased level of stops that the LGBTQ community faces, and particularly trans women and trans women of color face as well. And so I want to give voice to that aspect of this as well because this is also an LGBTQ issue. And I think I'm just really grateful that we're moving this forward and we can take this next step to making sure that members of our community are safer. Thank you.
Councilmember Ghazi-Edmond.
I've also thanked Councilmember Harrison for all your efforts in bringing this forward. And I also want to, name something that we haven't discussed a lot about, but the fact that secondary traffic stops are often a source of revenue for cities. And according to the 2015 Ferguson report released by the Department of Justice, cities that have a higher proportion of revenue that's sourced from fines and fees are more likely to have discriminatory policing practices, or more likely to have community distrust of the police, or more likely just to not be as safe of a community because there's distrust. So I want to urge us to think, obviously this is a good step in the right direction, but in general, how are we sourcing fines and fees, and just staying cognizant of that as well. I also thank, Councilmember Radina for pointing out this is also affecting LGBTQ drivers. And in reading the report, I also saw that it's had a significant impact on Asian American and Middle Eastern drivers. And this city is one of the largest Asian American populations in the state, so it's significant. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. As we vote on the driving equality ordinance, we are not just enacting law, but setting a precedent for prioritizing the well-being of every resident in Ann Arbor over the tedious enforcement of minor traffic violations. We have heard the voices of those impacted by these stops during public comment and throughout the deliberation process, and tonight we are acting on your behalf. The dialogue we've engaged in with groups such as the Vera Institute of Justice, the ACLU, ICPOC, and Philadelphia Council member Isaiah Thomas have been crucial in shaping this ordinance. These fruitful collaborations have helped us consider every aspect of this issue and our aim to address the chronic stress and unfair burden of low-level secondary traffic stops. Why an ordinance and not merely a policy? The answer lies in the long-lasting and binding nature of ordinances. A policy is internal, not public, cannot be legally enforced, nor can voters hold us accountable to it. An ordinance is law. We seek to enforce a change that is resilient, firm, and not subject to the variability of future administrative decisions. As we stand on the brink of voting on this ordinance, let us remember the journey that has brought us here. The tales of heartbreaking anguish and the calls for change have been our guiding light. I want to thank my fellow co-sponsors, Mayor Taylor, and city staff the Director of Organizational Equity, Laura Orta, the City Attorney's Office, and an extra special thank you to our new Senior Assistant, City Attorney Jen Janetsky, whose relentless dedication and commitment has brought us to this point today. Now is the time for us to take a bold step forward, to show our city and the nation that we value equity, fairness, and justice above all. We are prepared to do what is right, to lessen the burden on those who have been disproportionately affected, and to ensure that every interaction between our police and the public is rooted in respect and understanding. As we cast our votes, let's remind ourselves of the profound significance of this moment. Our decisions today will echo far into the future, shaping an Ann Arbor that is safer and more equitable to all of our residents. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to this cause. Now let's make history.
Further discussion? That's a hard one to follow, but I'll just be brief. Fundamentally, it is incredibly important that our law enforcement focus in our community be the promotion of public safety, performed with professionalism and without bias and favor. The secondary stops addressed by this ordinance are not necessary to affect public safety, simply put. Crucially, however, they unnecessarily disrupt the lives of community members. They corrode trust and confidence between police and community, and they can lead to fear, tension, and harm, as we've heard time and time again. I'm very grateful that Councilmember Harrison, Chief Metzer, and of course the law department and other staff up and down the line have worked hard to put together an ordinance which I believe is an exemplar of where I hope other jurisdictions will quickly follow. But finally, and most importantly, I'm grateful and am proud for our community's common commitment, and importantly, our acknowledgement of the great and complex work that still needs to be done to make Ann Arbor a place where all are welcome and where all feel and indeed are safe and respected. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. B2, an ordinance to amend Section 2.1 and 2.13 of Chapter 26 of Solid Waste Management of Title II, Utilities and Services of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Cornell, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of B2. Councilmember Cornell.
I'm glad that you went after Councilmember Harrison, so you were the act to follow hers. But just to remind everyone of this ordinance, this is something that my colleague Councilmember Briggs and I received an email about from a Ward 5 resident who was was issued a citation for putting out a dollhouse for one of their neighbors to pick up and recycle within their own home and used by their own children. And I had no idea that this was something that was illegal. So this ordinance allows the curbside placement of household items, appliances, bikes, kitchen gadgets, electronics, garden tools, etc. In any good condition, can be placed near the curb once a week for 48 hours. They can be placed in the public right-of-way in front of the property that is owned or occupied by that person. The item may not be placed in a roadway, sidewalk, or any path of travel, thus ensuring safe travel throughout the city. May not impede vision or create any physical obstruction for pedestrians, vehicle operators, or bicyclists, and must be clearly labeled that they are intended for donation or reuse. And so this, in my mind, is a no-brainer. It's encouraging our HE0 goals and promoting the circular economy that we want to promote within the city. So I will be supporting it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Really not much to add to what Councilmember Cornell said. I just wanted to also thank co-sponsors from the Environmental Commission, Councilmember Ackman and Dishu, for their support on this. And I think this is, just very much in line with, obviously, our environmental goals. We had a resolution we supported earlier around funding for just this sort of thing in terms of promoting the circular economy. And also, it's just a good way to promote community This is a good way that the residents are interacting positively with their neighbors. So, and finally, I would just like to thank Attorney Reiser for all of his support and guidance and working with all the different departments to get us to where we're at tonight. So thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Do we have the pleasure of a closed session today?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Alas. We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petition, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Guzzi Edwin. Discussion of the clerk's report. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Are there communications today from our indomitable city attorney?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Someday. Someday, perhaps. There having been no public comment overflow, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Briggs, second by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.